All right, let's go. The clock started, so I'm going to start. Mitch Janning, Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Vimeo. This is JD. We both used to run Mops at Vimeo. If you guys have been here before, you've seen JD and I up on stage here. I wanted to refresh a little bit of the JD and Mitch saga on stage at Open and MOpza. We started out episode 1. It was the rise of orchestration. It was sort of, getting away from your spreadsheets, getting actually, things moving across platforms in effective ways and non-manual ways. Last year, it was chapter 2. It was the attack of the data quality. We talked about the enrichment waterfall, the multi-vendor enrichment. And here we're back to talk about the return of product-led growth and how we are using a sort of a composable marketing automation platform to achieve that. I think the thesis here is that one solution does not always fit all. One size does not fit all. I think we've been sort of told that by a lot of vendors for a very long time, that like, yes, we can do everything. We're your all-in-one platform. But you really need to be able to identify when you need to bring in additional technology. Also, the temporary disruption can be worth it. You have to be able to balance that, measure out what you're going to, the cost-benefit analysis of that. But you always want to net out with a better than process. So generally, the go-to-market challenges with product-led growth, you need a multi-tiered business to do this. You need to identify those free accounts, those freemium accounts, those trials, and be able to scale them. And that journey generally has been really siloed, fragmented. You're moving lots of things across a lot of different platforms with a lot of different tools. And what you really need to do is bring something in that, while it can be across multiple tools, you want it to be streamlined and the best-in-class solution. So I think in the era that we are sort of coming out of right now, the era of all-in-one vendor consolidation, we were all sort of left with like a brittle systems, like things that we were like, okay, we're not doing this as well as we could because we have to use this platform. My budget is zeroed out this year. We have to use this platform. So these traditional marketing automation platforms, they're not built to handle the extent of all of the things we need to move around in this new sort of product-led growth. I said paradigm here. I can't think of a better word for it, but era, the moment that we're in. So what we need to be able to do is to compose this solution, to compose something that is best in class, that is better than, what you were traditionally stuck with. So JD is going to walk us through the 4 stages of MarTech grief, which are some of the feelings that we generally have in these brittle and bloated systems.
Yep, thank you. And I think it's important to remember that, this is our journey and this is kind of how we progress. Many of you will be early on in this. Some of you may be pretty late in this. And a lot of it is to bring out the idea of how far you are along. Because sometimes you're stuck in everything is fine, everything is great, right? We have this one platform, it does everything okay, right? It's not great, but everything is working. And then you start to realize that something starts to break, right? Something else starts to break, it starts to cascade down, and you said, maybe the starting point isn't good anymore, right? And maybe we need to start looking at how we have to go. So then you start thinking, okay, I'll just bring in another tool to do something because this broke, and it doesn't really have a plan across. You're just trying to solve problems. You're just patching together disparate platforms because it works. And I think ideally what you want to come to accept is that you need a strategy. You need to identify in your current step what is broken, also what is important, right? And what's important to us is not going to be what's important to all of you necessarily, right? Some people are going to be focused more on, emails and inbound, and some people are going to be outbound. So you have to take the kind of the lessons that we're going to say here and apply them to your methodology. But ideally, when you step back and you say, okay, that one platform that I've been so deep in, what if we got rid of it? What if we downsized it? What if we changed it altogether, right? And how do you find that sweet spot? And that's kind of the journey that we went on.
That's a hard question too. It took months for JD to bring me along to that concept, let alone the rest of our stakeholders. But so we came up with generally what we're calling a composable, I don't know if we coined this term, but a composable marketing automation platform. So it's rethinking the automation that we all sort of took for granted as being in your marketing automation platform, your single tool that has a budget line item that you can identify and point to that and say, that's how we do this. So we got to the point where we're like, okay, we need to start assembling the best-in-class tools to do these things, because they're out there. We all know they're out there. Some of them are in the room over there. Some of them are sponsoring these events. But we are going to assemble it into a flexible platform that works smarter, because working harder in your marketing automation platform is not getting us any closer to this product-led growth paradigm at this point.
All right, so ultimately the framework, and I'm sorry that this might just be obvious or simple, but literally an Excel spreadsheet where you outlined the things that are important, right? What are the things that we do on a daily basis to get our job done? How do they align? This is not in any order of importance. This is just like a brain dump of, here's the things that my current platform is doing. And you kind of go through it, and then if you go to the next, you identify, is it good? Is it the best, right? Or it might even be bad. We didn't have a lot of bad, right? And that was kind of why our transition was a little iffy and rocky at the beginning.
And that'll trap you too.
Yeah.
If you don't have bad, there's no impetus to get to the better than solution.
Right. But then when we started to zoom in, it's like, okay, a lot of goods. And in our PLG journey, we're looking at other platforms for our B2C side of the business versus the B2B side. Well, some of those start to overlap. Some of them overlap and are better. And you kind of think, well, why don't we consolidate those things here and find out how it works? So then we went through the next exercise of identifying just standalone, what is the best option out there that might take our good? Because obviously, if you have something that's best, it's not going to get bester, right? So
There's a ceiling.
You look at the good stuff, or obviously the bad stuff if you had it, and you start to identify these different players. Now this list is where it will vary drastically between all of us, right? And you kind of have to understand your business. For us, we had a very big B2C side of our business. And so that side, handling email, needed to be at a volume that just wasn't handled by a standard marketing automation platform. So we identified, in this case, it was message gears. Orchestration-wise, platforms, getting leads into systems wasn't always best in the marketing automation platform. We chose Openprise for that, and we started committing that motion there, because we could also then look across our PLG motion, which we talked about last year. How do we see the people that we know on the enterprise side of our business versus the consumer side that are transitioning over? All of these systems started to talk together. Traditional B2B SaaS automation platform doesn't necessarily. So we went through that, and I could let you read through the list. You cobble together all of the things, but you identify what is important to you, and then you double down on what's not. So ultimately, when we zoom out of this, giving a little visual, of the existing tech stack that we had, the idea was, okay, here's where we're starting. We have emails over here. We have emails over here. We have, a database of, Snowflake for our B2C business. We have Salesforce. We have, knack building emails and templates. And, how do we layer in the platforms we identified as better into this model? And you come up with a couple different methods. You can take your current automation platform, make it bigger. You can make it smaller. You can go away altogether, or you can do kind of what we'll touch on briefly and go monolithic, which is I'm not going to cobble together a lot of things, but I'm going to go with like the Adobes or these big platforms that have big, you have to have it all for any of it to work.
I think when I think of monolithic, I think of Adobe. It's the full ecosystem.
And I think of dollars.
I think of moths flying out of my pockets, basically.
All right, so let's go. So briefly, if you look at how do we expand what we're doing, how do we get our marketing automation platform to talk better to Snowflake? How do we layer that in? Do we need tools that are passing data back and forth? What does that option look like? Do we have to double down on the sync into, I found the crack, the sync into Salesforce that always seems to slow down the more
does anybody
you put
have a
through it?
good marketing automation to Salesforce sync in this room? that like they're happy with it? Yeah, didn't think so.
If so, there's a spot up here for you. Right, so then I can go to the next one. We look at, so this was our option A. It's really just toggling the same thing we were just talking about. But for us, it was, what if we took the B2C side and moved it more into Marketo, right? And we had it do more emails, and we had it do more. What would that look like? What would that cost? Is that the right move? And
is that going to make our bloated, brittle solution better when you
brittle or
brittle? Yes, that's the word we were looking for.
We're going to start All right, so option B was to go kind of reduce it down, keep what it was doing best at, double down on that, bring in another orchestration platform, expand that orchestration platform. For us, it was Openprise. Pass that data through. Don't worry about these syncs back and forth. Worry about big chunks of data implementing into other places. Bring in, CMS data with a different vendor. In this option, we kept NAC, we kept message gears, and we expanded that. Obviously, everything needs to go into a Tableau or a visualization, whoever you guys use. And that was kind of an idea. And this was where we kind of were like, oh, this kind of works. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I think option C is next. Yeah, here's the monolithic, right? There's
it's not option C, it's option cha-ching.
Option cha-ching for C.
Starts with C.
Right, and this was like, okay, let's take all our existing stuff, our Snowflake instance, our Marketo instance, our Openprise instance, and get rid of it and go into these, AJOs and BJOs and APOs and whatever they're all called.
I know all those
RTCTPs, all of that, right? And that's definitely an option. And man, it gets powerful if you can afford it, and it's great. But it is the leap of leaps if you're going to go down that route.
The connotation of the word monolithic applies here. Like it's a giant rock in the middle, and you better not want to change it after you deploy it.
But what we did find was that it was important to present it as an option, right?
Yes.
So ultimately, we put these options together. We went to our CMO and we said, here's our plan, right? We think, this will work. We think this might work. We think this is going to cost too much, but we think you would like it, right? He's like, oh yeah, let's see how that works. And then you show him like a price tag, and he's like, no. So, so you always have to be able to present all of your options, right? You don't just go to a CMO with here's the plan. No choice, right? So we put all these together.
We're going to talk more about that in a little bit.
And then ultimately, right, the composable, right, which is kind of where we said you go down on one, you bring in, we start layering in a Zapier for some iPaaS solutions. You start looking at solutions where one platform had a lot of integrations that you may not be able to leverage anymore. So you start finding a solution for that and building it into this ultimate strategy. And a lot of the emails then went kind of the B2C side, right? Instead of moving over to the enterprise side, we're like, this is a very powerful email engine, sending millions and millions and millions for us at the time. What's adding 100,000 more to that? It was nothing. Right, so we start building, how do we do that? How do we keep that data in there? This crack thing is driving me.
I think the part of the scalability is like looking at your existing volume of what you're doing and what you're not going to be able to change. Like Vimeo sends a ton of emails all day, every day. like JD said, like why would we put more into Marketo when we have systems that are super powerful, that are already doing these things, that our deliverability is good over there. We don't have to worry about the expansion of something that is sort of not meant to carry that heavy a load. But also, there's considerations we also had to make around Snowflake and the large sort of database that we are going to have to be accessing to move towards product-led growth. There's not necessarily a clean Snowflake to Marketo connector at the moment, and if there is, someone please let me know. I'd like to know about that. But that's generally, we started, moving things into Salesforce. So then from Snowflake, then we could move that into Marketo. We had to deal with engineering teams, all sorts of stuff. And getting Openprise to be our marketing orchestration, our marketing operations orchestration was very powerful. Bringing being able to do automations, to do inferences and things like that in our product database to understand like, okay, this person is using X and using Y, and it's like, okay, Openprise can see that directly into Snowflake. Then we can start leveraging that and move those people into the funnel. So yeah, this is sort of where we started to land.
Yep. You were going to cover this one.
I was going to cover this one? Oh, Jesus.
I mean, honestly, it is self-explanatory. It's just a different way of rephrasing.
And I'm not going to read you the slide, but this is sort of where we landed is, we still stuck with some enterprise emails that are enabled through the Snowflake, through Openprise orchestration in Marketo. That sort of, we stayed pretty normal with that. Message gears, we moved all of our self-serve emails over there. Openprise, we did our entire campaign management. We are doing our entire campaign management in Openprise, where we previously orchestrated all of that in Marketo in large folders of, like all of the programs that we're all familiar with. But in Openprise, we're generally just using reference sheets. So we're just sort of, when a new marketing program comes along, we'll just add another line of data, and Openprise is looking for this in this cell, in this cell, in this cell, and then we're all just processing that into Marketo and Salesforce to be leveraged down the funnel. Binder, we moved a lot of our assets out of Marketo because that CMS in Marketo is not great.
But I think also one of the learnings here is the other teams involved, right? And so I think we're calling out here that the creative team technically owned Binder because it's very useful for them to store into all their data. But now it connects into, for us, into our NAC instance. We can start bringing in the data straight from there. We don't need to rely on a Dropbox file or a Google Suite drive of whatever. We can bring in that through the connections. But now we're just going to work with the creative team. We're going to leverage their Binder instance, expand it, make it better, so that we're not just bringing in new technology. We're bringing in what's better for not just marketing operations. We're bringing in what's better for the creative team. We're bringing in what's better for the web team, with the Binder instance. How do we connect into that? Well, it's because Marketo for us still doing the forms. So we got to work with the web team to make sure.
We all still like Marketo
forms,
forms, right? So. They're still pretty okay? Okay.
They're pretty okay.
So generally how it works, we've just talked a little bit about this, but we take Snowflake, the curated tables that we work with data engineering on, and move those through Openprise. It does basic, honestly, it's anything you can think of. There's a way to do it, not just blowing smoke at this point, being on the open stage. But moving that into Salesforce and Tableau and message gears, we're enabling all this reporting, all of this campaign management through the Openprise orchestration. And like we said, we limited Marketo basically down to enterprise emails and APIs, moving things from Salesforce into Openprise and then back through into the top of the funnel. We're doing also identity resolution segmentation, a lot of that happening in Openprise. Our recipes are much easier to deal with in there rather than going, especially with things that we're looking at in Snowflake, going to engineering and having them write logic that I don't have access to and that is pretty opaque to us. Doing that with Openprise has really unlocked a lot of things. So I think what we've generally landed with is across the board, better than or on par systems than, better than we had before or on par with what we had before in this composed marketing automation platform. So we didn't actually have to take any hits on, downgrading anything. So that was a little bit, it was nice. There was an option that we might have to, but we didn't. I think it worked out pretty well for us. But one of the things that it's enabling, and one of these examples that I wanted to go through, is how we do a little bit of product-led growth. Just to give an example of some of the recipes and things that we work on in Openprise. So in Snowflake, we have all of our user activity data, storage, how often people are using features and things like that. So we basically put together a recipe, and we're looking at video uploads and team seat count, which is another feature of a certain tier of a plan. So if you're crossing any of these thresholds, we are finding you on not in a real-time basis, but on a daily basis in Snowflake. That is populating a table that Openprise sees every day that populates new scores to people that are already existing in Salesforce, or populating net new people who have sort of popped up within our user database into already existing accounts in Salesforce for outreach. So we're looking at these active users, we're moving them into the funnel. So Openprise reads this. We do the full enrichment because our user base, I don't know if you guys have this with any of your B2C, our sign-up form is name and email. It's not even first name, last name, and email. So Openprise works miracles in the multi-vendor enrichment, in the data standardization, normalization. So we actually get these people from our database to be sales ready. And when we put them onto an owned account, they are ready to be reached out that day. So then that immediately becomes available to report on in all of our systems and all of our platforms across the GTM. So this is just one of the orchestrations that we're running in Openprise. I think it's key. I think it's something that could be adapted across a lot of our PLG motions. So this was what we enabled.
Has anyone in here tried to run a PLG movement with name and email to an enterprise SaaS sales team that uses the phone?
How did they throw it back at you like a plate of food, a child with a plate of food? Because that's what they did to us at first. So we learned a lot of lessons in this process. So we're not going to assume that one platform can do it all. I think that's we're belaboring that point at this point. So also, the composable does not necessarily equal chaos. We looked at some of those flow charts and those diagrams, and it looks like a lot. It looks like, wouldn't it be cool if there was one thing that did all these things? Like, yeah, we tried that. We took about 10 years to try that. When the roles are clear, it's not chaos. It's well orchestrated. If you're pushing it through, best practices with your vendors, it's going to be pretty smooth. And the identity resolution and enrichment is the critical backbone. So what we're talking about, like moving people through the name and email, from the name and email to a fully realized Salesforce record, we can't do it without this. So the orchestration does require some modularity. We need to be getting the best in class. We need to be able to enrich all of these people. We need to be able to report on all these things as well. So we're doing that in multiple platforms, and that's one of those things that I think we got right here. So some of our key takeaways: be open when you're assessing things. Like, I have become much more open in the last 4 or 5 years. I will take demos with people. Like, I used to be like, oh, I've got a tech stack, it's cool right now. Take all the demos I can, because there's someday some component is going to pop up and you're like, okay, that fits right into my composable map. You know, and you're just, it comes when you least expect it, I think is what I'm trying to say. Also, do this on a regular basis. 2-3 times a year is not too often. Like, you will, if you don't plan to assess these things, 6 months, you know, 2 or 3 quarters will go by, and you're just like, okay, this has just got harder and harder over the time. So, like I said, demo a little bit more. The good, better, best, you know, methodology I think is big. And there is something that I do want to talk about communication. Communication upwards is absolutely crucial in this, because there are people, notably, you know, our CMO, who feel a certain way about certain things. Like, Marketo is their safety blanket. And it's just like, we want to reduce our reliance on Marketo. And he said, no. I said, but we've got this great plan, better than or on par with all of these systems. This is enabling the PLG growth that I mean, I'm getting pushed on PLG just as much as I'm getting pushed on AI right now. Like, it's at that level for us, and I think it is for a lot of other companies as well. But if we had involved our CMO a little bit earlier in this process, I think it would have gone a lot smoother. I think we would be at a very good place right now. We've hit some hiccups with this because of that communication not starting earlier, not being more continuous. And I don't think we were speaking his language, you know? So I think I would start those conversations internally at the beginning of this conversation internally. So before you know, when you have the germ of the idea, communicate that idea. And do it on a regular basis, because CMOs do forget things. And I'm not trying to be insulting to any CMOs in this room, but you guys are very busy. So, yes, this is our favorite.
We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, we're trying to amuse ourselves at the end of decks at this point. But basically, the composable map is empowering a lot of the things that you need to thrive in your business in this PLG sort of era, I guess. We're still going to call it era. So assembling a best-in-class, adaptive, flexible ecosystem, I think, is the goal here. I feel like I'm belaboring that point a little bit, but smarter, not harder. You know, it's if you start looking at it on a more regular basis, you will end up with something better at a certain point. You know, try again until you get there. Because I think standing still got us into this sort of the bloated, brittle mess that we're talking about right now. I think not reassessing things kind of got us here. And I would not like to see that for any of you in this room. So in closing, thank you. Got a couple minutes for questions.
Or lunch.
Yes.
No, we're doing questions. Yep.
Standing between us and lunch. First of all, I'm kind of in like an inverse situation where leadership hates Marketo, and we keep it. But I've definitely been open to moving off of it. And I think one thing that my team has really struggled with is, yes, there will be some cost savings, and I think that there's going to be some efficiency improvements. But the problem is, like, the migration process is very expensive in just the amount of hours that our team would spend on migrating and other teams. Mm-hmm. And it takes so much cross-functional involvement that, like, everybody's kind of afraid of it, despite how much leadership hates Marketo. So how do you kind of get around the actual hours and working hours and the cost of that to justify the migration itself?
Well, I think so much of this started like this. We're talking about the last 3 years of our journey. We've been kind of building towards this. And so what we did is we identified gaps. And the biggest gap for me originally was the campaign management. And how do I, like, do I need 100 smart campaigns in Marketo just to track my contact us form? Because the 6-digit number at the end is going to go to any number of different places. And it just wasn't scalable. And if I wanted to launch 100 more, I'm going to have to do, like, physically key 100 more. And I was like, you know, in Openprise, I can just have a list of the 100 and say if it matches that, go over. So I started small, and I was like, I'm just going to do Salesforce campaigns in this, and I'm going to build that. So we built that, and that took I mean, that took a while. Yeah. And then you kind of scale up from there, and you're like, well, if I'm already doing that over there, and then I send it back to Marketo once the enrichment is done to go into sales, well, why don't I stop sending it to Marketo and just send it to Salesforce? And let Salesforce send it back to Marketo whenever we want, because the big idea was speed to lead. And if somebody fills out a contact us form, I don't want it to come into Marketo, go to Openprise for enrichment, come back to Marketo to figure out the Salesforce campaign, wait for the Salesforce sync, right, which immediately is 10 minutes, right? And speed to lead's gone by then. So it's like, how do we, like, and even keeping Marketo, like, streamline it to Openprise so that it can enrich, figure out the campaign, and go to there, and that's now a minute. Like, there's no waiting. And so we kind of just started layering on these things, and we were already using Openprise for enrichment. So it was like, okay, we have enrichment, why don't we tack this on? Why don't we tack this on? And then it kind of just siloed itself into an engine that we just kept building on. So it was not fast, it's not easy, but I'll tell you, one of the fun things was when you ran a smart list in Marketo, and you said, if this is no longer my database of marketing, and it's more just my forms and capture and engagement, how many records can I delete?
Yeah.
And it was in the millions. And like, that was like, ooh, like, that's intriguing to me, because we have it so many places, and you don't want to have 3 copies of your database, Salesforce, and all over it, so the more you can get rid of. So it just kind of presented itself and became this journey until I went to my boss, and I was like, what if we got rid of Marketo? Right? My Twitter handle is @MarketoGuy.
Yeah.
Like him, he was like,
JD
the one
committed.
person I would not expect that to come from was you. Yeah. And I used this conference last year, Chloe's here somewhere. I went around to all of my network, and I was like, can I get rid of Marketo? And like, I was trying to talk myself into it, and it was a dilemma because I didn't want to do it. And then ultimately, with CMO and massaging it, we found a way that works, that made nobody uncomfortable. But it evolved.
And not to be corny, but like, how do you eat a Volkswagen, like, bite by bite? Like, there's.
I don't think that's how that's saying.
That's not how that works. I had a manager that said that. Oh no, it's you sprinkle it over your cereal in the morning. But yeah, like, this is not a like, pull the e-brake, stop everything. We're going to build a composable map this month. This is an evolution. Yeah. Like, acquiring the tools, speccing out those things. You can put them in. You can put all this stuff in place independently and still have value coming from it as you are composing. So it's it's a process.
Hi.
Hi.
So many of the clients that I work with that are using a PLG motion are similar to your setup, where they actually, I don't know, it's kind of a scary trend in my opinion, end up using Salesforce as middleware, because maybe the feeling is that, like you mentioned, like, the integrations just aren't good enough between Snowflake and Marketo or whatever that is. Do you feel like by integrating Openprise and however you've done it with Snowflake and Salesforce, that truly is like the best case scenario for you? Or was that more of a political choice for what we have, what's working well currently, what's better than what we could be doing?
I do consider Openprise best-in-class orchestration. So I think I'd worked with Openprise enough. I'd seen other things that are trying to do similar orchestration, and just be like, I don't think anything is as flexible as this can be. And also may have been biased because I've had enough time over the years to really understand what's possible. But I don't see all of those possibilities, like in some of these other tools that are doing orchestration right now. So I do think it was the best orchestration.
But as far as like making Salesforce the integration and not Marketo the integration point.
This is the thing. I'm not a Salesforce admin. They don't let us be Salesforce admins. Like, so I was basically like, what can I own as a marketing department, as a marketing operations department? What can I give my CMO confidence that is under him? Like, there's something, my CMO is like, why would I give up anything that's under me and give that to another team? Yeah. So I don't want to work with sysops every single day on an opaque Salesforce instance. And also, God bless Salesforce for what they've done to move things along, but I don't think it's evolving in the direction that I would prefer. So these tools, this sort of composable solution, I think is going in the right direction. And it's kind of away from Salesforce.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys did a great job, and especially balancing like, hey, technical capabilities with political realities.
Yeah.
As well. So.
It's a tightrope. But thank you. Appreciate that. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Hi.
There's
Hi.
Hi.
I'm here. I'm glad you made the move. I'm excited for you. I'm curious, can you, in the few seconds that are left, can you talk to us more about the change management of what it came with handling that change with marketers who are familiar with all the features in Marketo, and now all of a sudden you're saying, no, stop, get rid of Marketo and use these other things. How did you handle that?
You let marketers in your Marketo instance?
Unfortunately.
JD has the patience of a saint, which is one of those things that is helpful in this process, but I'll let him tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we had a centralized model. So we kept campaign operations kind of as in the Marketo instance and not the marketers. We utilized Knack for them to be able to build emails and some landing pages. So that was a nice way to keep them out of Marketo. And then we also utilized Openprise for the list load, which I think was a big unlock for us that took it off of the campaign operation. When you have one person or two people uploading every list for your company, that kind of became the demand gen bottleneck of, how do we get in to do all of these things? So we were able to build the apps outside of Marketo to keep them out. So ultimately and it all kind of evolved too from an intake process that I had, which again was outside, it was an Airtable. And what Airtable did was connect to everything individually, so I could honestly rip and replace the back end out without anybody really feeling it. And so we were able to do it piece by piece, and they didn't know. So one day I was just like, hey, here's a list load app. And they're like, oh, okay. And they didn't have to wait for me or ping me, or I'm working with APAC teams and different time zones waiting a day to hear back. So we enabled it outside of that. So if they submitted an intake form, Salesforce campaigns got created automatically. Marketo campaigns cloned automatically. They could turn on their web page, and then their forms were ready to go automatically. So to them, it was kind of streamlined through just an API call to activate things. So it was really easy. The change management side, because the goal was always make them have to do less, right, and never more. So I think as long as you're change managing them in a positive direction, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, don't let them see what's going on under the water. Be more like a duck, like kick wildly under the water and just say, hey, here's a list loader. We think it's going to improve your process. That's helpful for change management.
All right. We're over. Lunch
we
is
are
ready.
way over.
Lunch is getting cold. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.